We ready, Wendy?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good evening, citizens, guests, council, and staff. Tonight is regular meeting on Tuesday, August 18th, and City Clerk ready for the roll.
Mayor Cernanik?
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Beckman?
Here.
Councilmember Brinkman?
Here.
Councilmember Cole?
Here.
Councilmember Hopping?
Here.
Councilmember Stallman?
Here.
Councilmember Valdez?
Present. Thank you, Council. If everyone could please stand and join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And Council, looking for a motion on certification of minutes.
Approval of the agenda, Mayor.
Council, any changes to anticipate for the agenda? Seeing none, again, looking for a motion on the certification of minutes.
I've got the motion.
Thank you.
I move to approve with the council's permission, I would like to just join the 2 days together, if that's okay. I move to approve, based on the clerk's certification, the August 4th video as the minutes for the August 4th, 2015 regular meeting of the City Council, and the August 11th video as the minutes for the August 11th, 2015 study session of the City Council.
Second.
Okay, Council, we have a motion and a second. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Council. It is now time for citizen comments. Unscheduled appearances are an opportunity for any citizen to express opinions or ask questions regarding city services, council policies, or other matters of community concern that are not part of this evening's scheduled agenda. Generally, an immediate response should not be expected, and typically issues are referred to city staff for follow-up information or research and reported back to the council and the individual that initiated the comment or inquiry. If any citizen would like to speak during unscheduled public appearances, please complete a green citizen card, and these are located at the table at the entrance of the council chambers, and please provide the green card to the city clerk or leave it at the podium. Would anyone like to approach for citizen comments? Doug?
Doug Clark, Houston Waring. In March of this year, the citizens passed Amendment 300, which requires any modification to an urban renewal plan dealing with condemnation, tax increment financing, cost sharing, or revenue sharing to be ratified by the voters. The council didn't want any of its urban renewal plans to go before the voters, so the council rushed through the creation of tax increment financing areas that cover the entire urban renewal areas for Columbine, North Broadway, and Littleton Boulevard urban renewal plans before Amendment 300 passed. That effort by the council to avoid a vote on the urban renewal plans created a problem for the council. And the problem is, LIFT is now collecting tax increment revenue for the entire urban renewal areas of Columbine, North Broadway, and Littleton Boulevard, even though there are no urban renewal projects. To give a very specific example, LIFT is sucking up the new taxes created by the King Soopers at Littleton and Broadway, even though LIFT had nothing to do with that project, because the majority on the council blighted the King Soopers and included it in the urban renewal area. The icing on the cake is that the city will reimburse King Soopers for taxes it never gets from King Soopers, because those taxes are going to LIFT. Brilliant move. The other problem is that the council promised in Resolution 88 not to move forward on any urban renewal project without the full support and approval of all taxing entities, and then promptly voted to suck up all the incremental taxes from those taxing entities without the support or approval. And you did that by creating urban renewal areas, tax increment financing areas, which started the TIF. The solution that the city has devised, apparently in secret, is to send a letter to each of the taxing entities asking for their consent for LIFT to violate urban renewal law by not putting the tax increment monies into the special account required by the urban renewal law. LIFT is telling those entities that this scheme has been created in consultation with the city, even though, to my knowledge, this has never been discussed by the council, hasn't appeared on your agenda, at least not in public, as required by the law. The reason this scheme violates the urban renewal law is that the law is very specific about what has to happen with tax increment revenue. And not depositing it in the special account is not one of the options. This whole underhanded maneuver is designed to avoid a vote on changes to the tax increment financing, which is what's required by 300, which was passed by the voters. If the council didn't want to collect tax increment revenue until urban renewal projects came online, then it shouldn't have created the tax increment areas in a rush to avoid the election on 300. The law is very clear that the increment is started to be collected on the effective date of the modification, or in this case, the creation of the plans. What is happening here is that apparently there's a majority on the council that's basically saying to the voters, we refuse to bring any changes to our urban renewal plans dealing with tax increment financing to the voters, and instead what you're trying to do is a workaround with your letters of consent.
Would anyone else choose? Jim?
Good evening, Council. I wanted to speak tonight about...
State your name.
Jim Taylor. I live in the Riverwalk community. See how quickly you forget.
Yes.
I want to speak tonight about the Littleton Criterion. It was a great event. It's grown tremendously over the last 3 years. You had good crowds, well-controlled crowds by the gatekeepers that let people get in and out. But I do have a suggestion for next year. Open up Nevada Street. Nevada Street can be accessed by cars, both north and south, with the same type of man control that you have for the gatekeepers for pedestrians. It happens in other cities. We can do it here. That opens up those interior parking lots that's accessible off of Nevada. And you can even cross interiorly if you need to. That would make merchants, I think, a lot happier if they got some customers who can get into their businesses, and may have the effect of having a few more businesses stay open during the Criterion. Rinke Brothers closed their business because of the race on that day, and their parking lot sat empty. And I bring that up because the BMX loudspeakers interfered greatly with the loudspeakers at the announcer for the race because they were too close together. By either moving the BMX to Rinke Brothers' lot or putting the stage there, as either one could work and would free up some space. But it's time that we stop being so obstinate and start cooperating and utilizing that Rinke lot for major events like this when it's sitting there empty and they're doing nothing. Another item that I'd like to suggest you look at is the placement of food trucks, or even have them because they're competing with local merchants, local restaurants. And where they were located was in front of businesses, instead of putting them across the street, which would be in front of a parking lot. So it seems like the placement of those food trucks was not in an appropriate place. This brochure that the city put out was great. I'd like to see this event continue and even become an annual event. And I thank you very much for hosting it, and take my comments with whatever you want to give it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else choose to approach? Susan?
Good evening, Council and new councilmen. I hope you're all enjoying this beautiful summer we're having.
And state your name.
I wanted to thank you for addressing the issue
Susan,
of...
just state your name.
Oh, I'm sorry?
You are. You are.
Oh, Susan Thornton.
Thank you.
I guess I only give to name my street, West Easter Avenue. I wanted to talk to you briefly tonight and thank you for addressing the issue of the city's hopelessly outdated charter. As you all know, it's extremely old. And as you all know, I think it was my privilege to serve as vice chair of the Charter Commission that you appointed. The last time I was watching and saw this issue come before you, and I know you have more discussion tonight, there were people in the audience who came forward with comments about the proposed charter changes that frankly were so confusing, so wild-eyed, and so incomprehensible that I can't even begin to address them tonight. But I just wanted to thank you because of your vision in appointing a charter commission made up of ordinary citizens. Those citizens, at least one is here tonight, spent a lot of time. That this was nothing lightly undertaken. People had a lot of meetings. There was a lot of homework done. The commission looked at what other cities' charters looked like, et cetera, and in my opinion, did a great job of thinking about a charter that can guide the city into the future. As you know, most of the recommendations made by the commission were made unanimously. There were a few that were, there were split votes, but most were unanimous. The process was also very transparent, with opportunity at every meeting for people who wanted to come and comment to do so, and in fact they did. The members of the commission, as I mentioned, spent a lot of time on this, and I hope that you will, I know you will, seriously consider the recommendations to go forward to the voters in November. I want to thank you again for thinking about the future of Littleton, for caring about the future of our community, and for not being afraid to tackle a complicated task, which the charter changes certainly are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else looking to approach?
I would like. I know the chief of police for Arapahoe Community Colleges is here tonight, and we're discussing something that has a little bit to do with Arapahoe Community College later, but it's not an opportunity for opening up to the public. I was wondering if perhaps the chief could come down now and maybe just give us a couple comment during the open portion of this meeting. Thank you.
Unless the item ever gets pulled.
Unless it's pulled.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Joseph Morris, Arapahoe Community College Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
In public, do you want some of my opinions on the light? Is that what you want to shed a little light on?
Yes,
what we're
please.
doing with that? Through some traffic studies and some concerns brought about by our college community, I decided to petition the city to see if they would put up a flashing signal for pedestrian crossing between church that connects the rest of our college campus to the administration building on Church Avenue. So the city conducted some studies and noted that it had some valid points to doing that. The concern was there. There were some near misses. We've had studies of our own done where officers will stationary in that area, look to see if vehicles are stopping for pedestrians crossing that area. There is a sign in the center of the intersection, which most of the time goes unnoticed by motorists. So this idea had come around probably close to half a year ago to approach the city to see if they'd be willing to work in partnership with erecting that traffic signal there. And it's the wish of the college to make the donation for the equipment and materials to put that traffic signal in. As I had mentioned earlier, actually some of our own officers in uniform crossing that intersection or that area near Curtis have almost been struck by vehicles going through there. So in the interest of our students and staff that work at ACC, I thought it would be prudent to approach the council and see if we could work on this project and bring a crosswalk lighted area to the community.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Appreciate it.
And seeing no one else, we will close the citizen comments, moving on to comments and reports. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me start by discussing the urban renewal and the TIF just briefly in terms of what I believe the council policy direction has been. I stated this last time during my report as well, and I think Councilmember Brinkman reiterated or at least supported the implementation of the council policy. I believe that the council has been very clear since day one that there was no interest in collecting revenue until such time that there was a development application. I also believe that the council has been very open in their approach, and the passage of the resolution that was referenced on the partnership with our other taxing entities is a clear indication of the council's interest and willingness to only do projects that really raise the boat, if you will, for the entire community of all the taxing partners. And in fact, I think that is reinforced to an extent in the legislation that was passed at the state this year requiring at least seats at the table by the other taxing entities. This council chose to go a step further and say you don't just get a seat at the table, you actually get an opportunity to say my increment is not on the table for taking because this particular project doesn't lend itself to something that I can give up that revenue for. And so I have been operating under those two premises. One, that there is no interest in keeping any increment until such time that there's a development application, and B, that should there ever be a development application and the resolution speaks to staff, meaning city staff, which is your city manager in the implementation of your policy, will sit down with our taxing entities on whatever that project is and have that negotiation about what type of project is it, what's the public investment, what's the revenue look like. So there have been no secret meetings on any front. What is occurring now is the implementation, I believe, of that council policy direction, which is to ensure that the existing taxing entities collect or keep their revenue until such time that there's a development application. The attorneys have opined that that is a legal action to do. They are now putting that process in place. Councilman Stallman may want to speak during his update. He attended the last LIFT board meeting when that action happened. That is why, as council is aware, I went and spoke with the county commissioners several weeks ago, because they're the one taxing entity that we do not have that intergovernmental agreement with, allowing us to give back, if you will, or share back that increment. So I think, and in service of ballot measures, et cetera, that the council is really doing what is in service of the greater community, which is to ensure there is no taking of anything until such time that there's a development application resulting in some built environment. And then the increment that is utilized will only be utilized by those of us, meaning South Suburban, LPS, et cetera, and the city is included in that, that feel like that increment can go for the service of those public improvements, because that development at the end of the day is a benefit to the greater community, again, county, et cetera. So I just want to put that out there, and I'll let Councilman Stallman speak later if he so chooses. If that is not the council's intent, I need to know about it, because I believe that's been the council policy, and I've been implementing that policy at your direction. All right. The uplifting part of this, we signed a contract today with Cigna, our CareCar program. Councilman Stallman, you'll be pleased to hear this. So this is for our CareCar program and our other kind of non-transports. When we run into, when we get a call out, non-emergent call, we go out with the CareCar responds, and we take care of that individual. We suture the eye. We do whatever needs to happen. Historically, we've got no billing opportunity for that. So it's been an outlay of expenditures. I think the council's aware of that. It's a community benefit. It's a great thing. You have an opportunity because we're not looking to make a profit on this, but we do want to try to recover all the costs we can. So the approach we've taken is to do direct contracts with the paying insurance companies, the Cignas, the Uniteds of the world. And so today we made that first substantial step by having a contract with Cigna. And so now we'll start with United, and ultimately the vast majority of our calls come through Medicare and Medicaid and the feds, and so we've got to work on that, along with a lot of other folks who are working on getting payment from the federal government. So we'll continue to plug away on that one. All right, moving on, we had Little Jam in Bega Park on August 8th. It was a huge success. We estimated upwards of 3,000 people of all ages in attendance to hear that 80s band. Lots of dancing, long lines for food trucks, and Kelly is proud to say we sold 11 kegs of Breckenridge Brewery beer. Or she actually says were consumed. Western Welcome Week Parade was on Saturday. You guys know as well as I do it was hotter than heck, and the council's float was a big hit. There was a nice post on the South Suburban Park Foundation Facebook page about the Twilight Criterium. You heard about that from a citizen this evening. Each of the 5 agencies that provided volunteers earned a little over $1,000 from beverage sales for helping us with the event. We have a coffee with council with council members Brinkman and Stallman this Thursday at Starbucks at Aspen Grove, 7 to 9 a.m. Our last meet, greet, and eat for the summer is a week from today. It'll be 4 to 6 p.m. at Kettering. So hopefully you guys can all make that. We have the kickoff meeting next week with Green Play to start the process for a Parks and Rec master plan with South Suburban. Deanna from South Suburban will be their project manager, and our deputy city manager, Mike Broughton, will be our project manager. There is still room for students in this fall's Littleton Police Academy. Classes begin Thursday, September 3rd, and there's an application online at littletongov.org. This Thursday at 5 is the deadline for the storm sewer and storm sewer utility payment, grace period. Payments must be received in the finance department by that time. This council has been very supportive, I think, of shifting from the focus that Kay Wilmshire has been placing on working with LPS and shifting that to addressing the needs of the seniors. The Senior Resource Center at the library, obviously you guys are supported that and funding for that, and want to let you know that the Aging Well Resource Center continues to receive rave reviews. A client sent in a note recently that said, "Thanks for the Aging Well Resource Center. The nice lady helped me a lot, and frankly, I think she saved my sanity from all the confusion and my health. Yay." So we get those kind of comments all the time. So we're continuing to expand the hours of service. We did lose the person who was there, but we're recruiting to find somebody else, and Kay's going to continue to expand that program, and hopefully 2016 it'll continue to kick off. So appreciate your support on that. As you know, there were devastating wildfires in California that have been burning for weeks. Littleton Fire Rescue has 5 wildland members deployed to assist in these fires, and I'm sure council's aware we get reimbursed by the feds. That is something we get paid for from the federal government. And we look forward to our staff's safe return after those fires are out. And finally, we've got some pretty dramatic video to show you. Littleton Fire Rescue was called on Saturday by bystanders who saw a woman and her teenage son stuck in the rocks in the middle of the South Platte River. Neither of them had life vests, and the woman's ankle was trapped in the rocks. The dive rescue team responded with rapid deployment craft with dive team members Mike Velasquez and Corey Lambert on board. They were able to get life vests to the victims. They were able to free the woman from the rocks and get her into the boat. She was taken to the hospital and treated for hypothermia. Her son was rescued downstream by Lieutenant Reggie Hyatt and firefighter Eric Horvat, and he is okay as well. The woman told her rescuers that she was ready to black out before they saved her. A big pat on the back to the Littleton Fire Rescue dive team for undoubtedly saving this woman's life. And with that, there's the video. Do not have sound for it.
We can make the gurgling noises.
I was going to make a comment, but I did not. So thanks, Mayor.
Good job to the team.
You can always count on Phil. Yeah.
And that's all I have when it's over.
What
What- I'm
stretch
sorry?
of river is that?
That was right there by Reynolds Landing.
At Reynolds Landing? Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Cole?
Well, okay. Man, I had a great time at Western Welcome Week because I got to work with Dunk-A-Cop. So we got a little splash, so we stayed a little cooler. But we took in with tickets to throw balls at the officers who volunteered and donations. We took in over $1,000 for the Police Citizens Academy alumni group, so which will be used for special projects. So super on that. Then I thought maybe when Susan was at the mic, she would say something about this incredible fundraising dinner that's coming up. I'm hoping all council goes and lots of citizens. This is August 27th, 5:30, is that? 6. 6 o'clock at the museum. This is for the Littleton Immigrant Integration Initiative, which is a prize-winning program that helps with our immigrant population. And so we have an annual dinner, and the funds go to that. So if anybody wants information on it, they can contact me or Susan or some other folks. But either one of us would be glad to send you more detailed information. Thank you.
Councilmember Stallman?
Thank you. This will take a couple minutes, but I'll do my best to be brief. Attended the library board meeting on August 5th. A couple pieces of information. On the 21st of October, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. is the volunteer recognition lunch. It'll be a 125th anniversary theme similar to Western Welcome Week. The Sophie Bramley Sylvan Trust Fund has about $29,000 left, and it's going to be used to upgrade software and equipment for patrons who are visually impaired, which is the charge for that particular trust. They had a very successful summer reading program for both kids and adults. The Comic Con was held on the 30th of July. At over 600 attendees. I understand the mayor was in attendance for that. That's good.
In costume.
Ooh, excellent. I won't ask which. I knew that because it was brought up at the meeting. And the Bemis has just received a state literacy grant of $12,000, I believe, for collection materials. So there you go. I'm sure you'll be hearing about that soon. On the 13th of August, I attended the LIFT board meeting. Couple of bits of information from that. Corey Hoffman, the attorney for LIFT, reported that there was a motion for summary judgment, I believe from the district court, pertaining to a question of law on the issue of compliance with 1 versus 2 portions of the statute for ag land. The city prevailed. The court found for the city, and we only need to comply with 1 point of the portion of the statute, which was our argument. The county had indicated that we needed to apply for 2. There's one last bit of information or bit of contention having to do with the percent of ag land as a matter of fact. That'll be adjudicated on the 24th of September. At this juncture, on this court issue, and then there was the arbitration issue, the city has provided on both of those, which, again, my opinion, reiterates how disappointing it was that the county commissioners decided to engage in political activities or interests as opposed to good public policy outcomes by collaborating with us. And so I think we're being vindicated in terms of our efforts to try to reach out to all of the partners we're working with in that regard. LIFT is going to work with Denise to market the urban renewal activities or opportunities as part of the city's economic development activities broadly, and there will be an IGA for city administrative services. Now, I'm going to apologize in advance here. Our job up here predominantly is to listen to people, all citizens, or anybody who wants to come down and provide information to us. And I don't necessarily, I find it distasteful to have to correct information that was provided. So Doug, I'm going to apologize to you respectfully. My intent here is not to create ill will. Doug is a very smart man, and he knows a lot of this information, and frankly, a couple of his associates in Sunshine Group were at the meeting, Carol and Linda, and Corey Hoffman went through a bunch of this information, which I'm going to relay to you, which is going to contravene much of what Mr. Clark suggested to you a bit ago. I will say I don't think anybody in this community is advantaged by having people come down and ascribe ill will to what council's doing. Consistently throughout this process, we have tried to be literally as transparent as we could. Mr. Clark indicated we rush these things through. If rushing means 18 to 24 months to get a plan through the process and approved, then perhaps that is rushing, but it doesn't qualify in my opinion. I fully appreciate there are people in the community who don't align or have enthusiasm for urban renewal broadly, and that was pretty clearly set forth in Initiative 300. At the same point in time, I believe council and staff have absolutely acted honorably in terms of applying the law as it has been conveyed to us by the attorneys. So, for example, there are no development proposals, but the law, according to Corey Hoffman, who is the attorney for LIFT, says that a project is in fact defined as any undertaking or activity. It's not necessarily a specific proposal. And because we have pre-approved plans and city activity to communicate opportunities through urban renewal, we do in fact have a project according to Mr. Hoffman. Therefore, property tax revenues as a tax increment could exist if there were any. The way they would exist is that if there hasn't been a biannual reassessment, so for example, King Supers hasn't been reassessed yet, and its assessment is still going to be during the point in time that it was under construction, which means the value hasn't even gone up. If there were any growth projects occurring independently of urban renewal activities, those could result in higher assessed value that could lead to property tax increment that could go to the special fund that LIFT then could keep to use for, quote unquote, any undertakings or activities, which is a project, which would be to either pay back the city or to promote their activities. Or they could do what we had indicated we wanted done all along, which is share those back with the taxing entities up until the point in time that a development proposal for a specific parcel does in fact come in. Mr. Hoffman also reiterated that King Supers and the sales tax increment that we arranged with them before the urban renewal plans were in place has absolutely nothing to do with urban renewal because it's a sharing of city general revenue funds, not sales taxes associated with an urban renewal activity. Long story short, again, the issue here is it's a very complicated undertaking. It's a highly charged activity. My sense of all of this is that we're better off as a community talking about these activities and the opportunities that may or may not ever arise under urban renewal in a neutral fashion without bringing a lot of accusation or emotion into it. 300 exists. 300, we're being advised by attorneys in terms of what the law requires us to do, and we will fully comply with the law at the point in time that we're required to do so. You can either believe the council is out here trying to hose everybody in the city and just jam stuff through because I don't know why, but in theory you can believe that, or you can believe that people who are basically not career politicians are neighbors and friends of yours who have volunteered, in so many words, to sit up here and try to solve some of these issues on behalf of the community, are doing their level best on for the benefit of the community, which, in my opinion, is exactly what's happening. So I'll shut up now. Thanks.
Thank you for the clarification. Councilmember Valdez.
Cool, thank you. First, I want to thank all the Western Welcome Week volunteers that were out there. Many of those folks, they had to be there very early in the morning. Many of them even had to get up and go to a regular job maybe the next day or over on Monday. I also want to thank City Manager, many of the Littleton staff that you have that volunteer that are not on the clock. And they're on their own time and get out there. In particular, Tim Weaver, I know he was out there at least by 5:30 Saturday morning, as well as so many others, Kathy Weaver's another. So if you will, please pass that on to all of those and to all of the volunteers for that matter. Also, my last item, and it won't be as long as others, but when we get up here, we all volunteer, and we miss things like our wife's birthdays, which could be today, for instance. So happy birthday to my beautiful wife, Mary Pat.
We agree.
Thank you.
I have no report.
Councilmember Hopping.
I just wanted to comment on Nextdoor, which is a program. It's actually a website that I was watching today, and Mark Behrens, the city, has put together. It's a wonderful way for the community to be in touch with one another, and it lists a lot of neat happenings that the city is putting on. For example, it'll talk about the criterium, and has a great video on it right now that talks about all the restaurant openings and the projects that are going on, like down on the river at Riverside Downs and Reynolds Landing coming up and such. And it's a wonderful way to stay in touch. It also is a good way for neighbors to communicate about things that they may want if they look for a handyman or if they look for
Japanese beetles, perhaps?
Japanese beetles. I know Councilwoman Brinkman has a lot of those. But that's because you're in the wrong district, I guess. But Nextdoor, take a look at it, nextdoor.com. It's an outstanding thing, and I think it'll grow a lot, and it's a very good way to stay in touch. Also, if you watch that, there's a segment on it called Penny for Your Thoughts, which, not so coincidentally, is Michael Penny talking about different things in Littleton. Michael, you did a very nice job on that video, and I'd like to commend you for that. It's a great communication from the city to the citizens, and it helps that human piece that Councilman Stallman was talking about, that we're really here to try to do our best to make the city a better place to live. And I think that's the best demonstration of it, is to see that type of thing rather than a bunch of partially suited people up here trying to wax poetic on proposed changes. So thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Beckman.
Good evening. I just wanted to add on to what Jerry talked about with the volunteers. Today I happened to go by the Western Welcome Week office and talked with Cindy Hathaway, and we were talking about the volunteers. And she guesstimated that it took 1,500 by the time you divide it completely through the almost 2 weeks that we do it, plus all the pre-planning and everything that happens behind the scenes. And that's just a guesstimate, but I think I'd probably go along with that. My experience was I like to work the pancake breakfast at ACC. ACC entire staff commits themselves to doing that. A lot of city employees are also involved one way or the other. We had volunteers that I'm sure at least a couple were probably in their high 70s, perhaps 80s, and a couple of three were in their teens, and everybody else in between. I guess it probably took, I'm guessing, 100 volunteers to make that pancake breakfast work. And they purchased 3,500 linked sausages for that breakfast, and they were all gone. So you can imagine that if everybody got two, we had well over 1,500 people go through that event. And that's just typical of what happens every year. So again, I want to commend the volunteers, the city staff, the ACC law enforcement folks, the ACC, the staff. Everybody got involved, and they made it work. And this year's planning was just exceptional. It was just so well done. So thank you.
Thank you. And a couple items to mention. One was earlier today, the 6 Western Arapahoe mayors had an opportunity to address the Realtor group. And Stu, you're here. Thank you again for the opportunity to have done that. Certainly the themes that the mayors had an opportunity to expound upon were one's dealing with the quality of life in our community and what we're doing with regard seniors and children and families to make the South Metro area there. We think we do a special job here in Littleton, as the city manager mentioned, with regard our Aging Well Resource Center and what Susan Thornton has done with the transit group here in Littleton as well. Also, want to extend my personal thanks to all the Western Welcome Week volunteers. It's really one of those things that's just kind of amazing, but it's also the businesses that come together and do a number of things. This year, Tina and Tom at Lido had the wine tasting that occurred at the Taste of Littleton last Wednesday evening, and donation of the proceeds for all of us who happened to order some wines. Some of us may be sitting on this dais. A portion of that, Tina and Tom are donating back into the Western Welcome Week coffer, and certainly appreciate that. And also an appreciation to the staff and others that are not only doing their day jobs, but also one of the things is Jocelyn, our new Community Development Director, will be attending a session next week around Transit Alliance and hearing more about what is happening in the metro region with regard transit activities as we're looking to undergo our transit-oriented development with regard to the Mineral Station as well as the downtown Littleton Station. So thank you for all of that. And with that, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Consent agenda items can be adopted by simple motion. All ordinances must be read by title prior to a vote on the motion. Any consent agenda item may be removed at the request of a council member. We have consent agenda items 7A through 7F, or 7H, excuse me. Consent agenda item 7A is ordinance 85-2015. This is an ordinance...
84, Phil. 84?
Excuse me, ordinance 84-2015. Thank you. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 10 of Title 6 of the City Code pertaining to electronic smoking devices and smoking prohibitions in the downtown area, and this schedules the second reading in 2 weeks.
Well,
Councilmember Valdez. Agenda item 7B is ordinance 24-2015. This is an ordinance amending the city code concerning temporary outdoor displays of merchandise in CA and B2 zones to eliminate the number of days each month when outdoor displays of merchandise shall be allowed, and this schedules the second reading. Consent agenda item 7C is ordinance 86-2015, an ordinance amending the city code concerning structures on public rights of way, and again schedules the second reading. Consent agenda item 7D is a resolution. It's resolution 56-2015. It's a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, approving a startup and backup wastewater treatment intergovernmental agreement with Dominion Water and Sanitation District. Next is consent agenda item 7E. This is resolution 50-2015. This is a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the Arapahoe County Clerk and Recorder and the City of Littleton regarding the conduct and administration of the November 3, 2015 coordinated election. Next is agenda item 7F. This is resolution 51-2015. This is a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the Douglas County Clerk and Recorder in the City of Littleton regarding the conduct and administration of the November 3, 2015 coordinated election. Next is consent agenda item 7G, resolution 52-2015. This is a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement for coordinated election between the Jefferson County Clerk and Recorder and the City of Littleton, and this is for the election of November 3, 2015. Next is consent agenda item 7H. This is the resolution 53-2015. It's a resolution approving an agreement with the State of Colorado Department of Higher Education by and through the State Board of Community Colleges and Occupational Education for the use and benefit of Arapahoe Community College to purchase a pedestrian crossing signal for the intersection of West Church Avenue and South Curtis Street, and that was referenced with Chief's comments earlier today. Looking for a motion approving consent agenda items 7B through 7H.
So move.
Second.
Okay. Council, we have a motion and a second on consent agenda items 7B through 7H. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Moving back to agenda item 7A, Councilmember Valdez.
Thank you. Just one question. On the staff analysis of the item, it mentioned in there that there was input through openlittleton.org to promote the question. What was the question? I couldn't find that anymore.
So the question was, and Mike Broughton, Deputy City Manager, the question was, would you support, this might not be worded perfectly.
I would like the exact wording of it. And the reason I asked that is because I read some, and if you don't have it tonight, that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
But when we bring it forward the next time, if you could just add it, if you will. The reason, because there was something on one of our surveys we did just recently in the question, while not intending to be misleading, it wasn't a complete question that gave us, I think, a real understanding answer. So if you could maybe just add it, because I would like the exact wording.
Sure. I will. I'll check for you. The intent was to basically get input on an outright ban.
And I think that's fine. It's just that when I saw the difference between the merchants and, I guess, more citizens, it was just such a different thing. I just wondered. Cool.
Certainly.
I appreciate it.
I'll have it for you.
That was it. That's all I have.
Okay, Councilmember Valdez, with that commitment that by the time we have the second reading, we'll have that information. Would you care to make a motion?
Somebody can go ahead.
I move to approve on first reading the ordinance amending Chapter 10 of Title 6 of the City Code pertaining to electronic smoking devices and smoking prohibitions in the downtown area, and to set a public hearing for September 1, 2015 at 6:30 p.m. in the council chamber.
Second.
Council, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, council. We'll now move on to section 8, ordinances for second reading and public hearing. First up is agenda item 8A. This is ordinance 82-2015. This is an ordinance on second reading approving the Fifth Amendment to the lease between the City of Littleton and Wells Fargo Bank National Association. And I don't know if it's...
I can take this, Mayor. This is a continuation of, and actually Councilman Beckman's probably got some history on it as well, but it's a annex in the Wells Fargo location for us to have an officer up there, and so it's a continuation of a long-term lease, and there's really not much more to say about that. It's a standard renewal. We're using the Wells Fargo lease documents. It's a Wells Fargo corporate, so pretty straightforward, and we can delve into it, but I'm guessing there's no questions on it.
Council, at this time, any questions? Seeing none, we will open the public hearing for ordinance 82-2015 at 7:18 p.m. There is no one listed on the roster. Would anyone care to approach? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing at 7:19 p.m. and a half. Council, looking for a motion or discussion on ordinance 82-2015.
Move to approve on second reading the ordinance approving the Fifth Amendment to the lease between City of Littleton and Wells Fargo Bank National Association.
Second.
Council, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Council, moving to agenda items 8B through 8F. We will have a preamble comment from the city manager on these, but we will be addressing each one with regard public hearing individually. The first one is Agenda Item 8B, Ordinance 35-2015. This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, submitting a ballot question to the registered electors of the city at the November 3, 2015 regular election to amend Sections 21 and 22 of the city charter. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. It was actually stated by one of the citizens earlier who's the co-chair of the committee, so I won't reiterate a lot of what was said, but I just want to remind the council that it was a panel that was put together by the council. There were 14 members. Staff spent a substantial amount of time with them as well. They drilled down into those issues and had, I think, around 60 overall proposed changes. We had culled down some of the more straightforward ones, and this would be 10 that we have proposed, as council is aware, to put on the ballot for November of 16. There's many more to come, but this is, I think, what we felt was doable with the city clerk working with the other counties and the costs associated with running a longer ballot, just in terms of the physical size of that ballot and the costs associated with that for us as well. So these are, all 10 of these, and certainly the 5 tonight, are universally supported and recommended by the committee, and the council during their study session as well supported all of these as well. So that is a statement for all of these, Mayor. Thank you.
And to add to that, most of these deal with outdated language. So, okay, council, any questions on 8B? If not, we'll open the public hearing on agenda item 8B. This is ordinance 35-2015. There is no one signed up on the roster. Is anyone looking to approach? Sally?
I would like to address after the reading of each of these amendments.
After she said.
You have to go up to
Would you care to address them now?
No, I'd rather do that.
Okay. Okay. So, and so if I'm understanding you, you want to address them after we address each of these items? So you want a kind of a general comment at the end of 8F? Okay. So noted. Okay. Council, we've opened, did I open the public hearing?
You did.
Yeah. Did. Okay. Seeing no one else approaching, we'll close the public hearing on agenda item 8B at 7:22 p.m. Council looking for discussion or a motion?
So I would request that we clarify for the voter, for the people watching, what these deal with, not just the title of the section of the charter, so that these deal with council salary, whatever, so that we get that on the record, so that somebody watching this now or as it's rebroadcast knows what each of these actually is addressing.
Such as the policy question.
Pardon? Yeah.
So this one deals with, Mayor, would you like me to respond? So this one, in the charter currently, there is a spreadsheet outlining the initial salaries for the council members. And then it currently says in the charter that future salaries shall be set via ordinance. And so it's a little unfortunate, at least in my opinion, about how you have to draft this, but nonetheless, it is what it is. And so the language is, shall the council set their salaries by ordinance. So it's essentially repeating what's in the charter right now, but we're removing the original spreadsheet that was there.
Just for clarification, the spreadsheet you're talking about were the salaries that were set in 1959 when council was created.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
So we haven't used that spreadsheet in a few years.
Yeah.
Right. It's removing an old table.
How'd they get a spreadsheet?
Well, and since you said it that way, council would not set salaries affecting themselves. It would only be for future elected people.
Yeah,
could never raise our own
in
salaries.
In the charter and state law, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. This ballot item does not change how the salaries are determined or how their length of terms are or the term limits of council members. So it's just really the removal of the table that is outdated. So, Council, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the ordinance on second reading, submitting a ballot question to the registered electors of the city at the November 3rd, 2015 regular election to amend sections 21 and 22 of the city charter.
Second.
Council, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Seeing none, Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Council, we move on to agenda item 8C. This is ordinance 69-2015. This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, submitting a ballot question to the registered electors of the city at the November 3, 2015 regular election to delete Section 109 of the City Charter concerning the sale of water or water services. And the policy question is regarding amending that section. And this has to do with the fact that Denver Water currently manages all water and water services in the City of Littleton, so that Section 109 is no longer relevant to the city. Council, any discussion? Seeing none, we will open the public hearing for agenda item 8C at 7:26 p.m. Doug, come on down. There's no one else on the roster.
Doug Clark, Houston Waring. The section that you're proposing to remove says the council shall have power to enter into temporary contracts for sale of water or water services in or outside of the city whenever it determines that the available water supply exceeds that necessary for the present needs of the inhabitants of the city. Said contracts for water and water services shall be for periods not exceeding 1 year and subject to the present and future needs and requirements of the city and its inhabitants. Since the council already has power to enter into contracts and intergovernmental agreements, the essence of this section of the charter limits the types of contracts that council can make for the sale of water or water services. The staff states in the council communication that Denver Water currently manages all water and water services in the city of Littleton, and therefore the section of the charter is no longer relevant to the city. The problem is that's not true. Denver Water does not manage all of the water in Littleton. Denver manages water supplies and supplies the water and manages the delivery of that water within the city limits of Littleton for potable water needs, but Littleton has water rights and water needs that are not accommodated by Denver Water. Littleton has rights to withdraw water from the Highline Canal to supply Kettering Lake, for instance. Littleton has recreational water rights it obtained along the South Platte River for recreational and fishing use along the Platte. It also owns 2 wells and has rights to water from City Ditch and uses water supplied by Englewood to augment Cooley Lake. My memory also is that Centennial Water and Sanitation is contractually obligated to supply Littleton with water to run the irrigation system that exists at the south end of the South Platte Park that protects the cottonwood forest down there from stress caused by Centennial Water and Sanitation pumping from the river. And finally, Littleton has spent taxpayer money to obtain water rights from the Denver, Arapahoe, and Laramie Fox aquifers. Section 60 of the charter requires a vote of the people before Littleton can sell or convey any water rights. No one has suggested removing that text from the charter. Section 109 that you are suggesting being removed from the water contains limitation on the sale of water Littleton currently owns or is entitled to. Why on earth would we think it's important to protect water rights but not to protect the sale of water that we get from those rights? I recommend you vote against this ordinance to delete Section 109 from the charter. Throw away all the restrictions that are contained in that section of the charter for selling water. I think is bad management. Thank you.
Anyone else looking to approach? Then we'll close the public hearing at 7:30 p.m. Council comments or motion?
I move to approve on second reading the ordinance submitting a ballot question to the registered electors of the city at the November 3rd, 2015 regular election to delete Section 109 of the city charter concerning the sale of water or water services.
Second.
Council, we have a motion and a second. Any additional comments, discussions? Councilmember Stallman.
Yeah, as city manager, do you want to sort of contextualize?
Well, I would, and again, I said this last time we did this, you've got several members of the committee in the audience as well, so they can speak. But the limitation of the 1 year was something that the committee felt was not relevant and not necessary to put that level of restriction on it. There was a lot of discussion around the other section because of the historic water rights sale to Denver Water and the amendment to the agreement with Denver Water. And so there was substantial discussion about that, and I think probably much more concern about the ability of council, without a vote of the people, to be able to sell significant assets of the city. And the committee had spent a lot of time talking about built environment, things like water rights, even naming rights and trademarks and different things that were associated with the city. But my recollection from this was there was not concern it was primarily around the limitation of that 1 year and basically saying council should be able to enter into longer contract period for services. And we did discuss the other water rights that the city held during those discussions, and so the committee was cognizant that there were water rights beyond the Denver Water piece as well. And again, you've got committee members, if their recollection is different or they would like to add anything to that.
Sally, Stu, anything to add? No. Other comments? Council members Beckman?
Well, each of these actions were recommended by the commission and discussed from the citizen point of view, but they were also further reviewed by staff and by attorneys to ensure that the city was not giving away any of the rights or property or any abilities that are appropriate for the city to maintain for the future. So if I could have the city attorney just mention that she did review these and that the limitation of this discussion to this one section it has in no way placed a jeopardy on the city for the future.
City attorney?
Yes, we did review it, and we worked with the committee as they were going through this. Both the city attorney at that time and myself, we were at all the meetings.
Thank you.
Just one comment. It does seem as though the staff report is in conflict a little bit, because while the ordinance itself doesn't say we're giving away all of our rights or anything like that, as the citizen said, that's the difference I see, is that the staff report states that all water is controlled by Denver Water, and that's just not true.
Correct. That is correct. And that's why I pointed out that during those meetings, so we apologize for that, but want to make sure that the council understands that the committee was fully cognizant of the other water rights owned by the city. And again, the issue was, as I recall, they viewed that charter section as a limitation on the council in terms of entering into those contracts for a 1 year period, and they felt like that it should really be up to the council on what the term of those contracts should be.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Council, if no further discussion, looking for a motion.
You got it in a second.
You already have a motion on the table.
Oh, we have a motion? Oh, yes, we have a motion and a second. Council ready to vote? And again, this is with regard agenda item 8C, ordinance 69-2015. A vote in favor will carry it forward to the registered electors at the November 3, 2015 election.
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilmember Cole voting no. The motion carries 6-1.
Thank you. Next is agenda item 8D, this is ordinance 73-2015. This is an ordinance of the City of Littleton submitting a ballot question to the registered electors of the city at the November 3, 2015 regular election to amend Section 155 of the city charter so that franchisees must pay permit and inspection fees. And the policy question is support amending that tool regarding the payment of permit and inspection fees by franchisees. Questions or comments?
Yeah, City Manager, just a quick question. Talks about amending Section 155, but then down under the analysis it talks about Section 115 of the Charter. Is it 115, not 155? Is that a typo?
It's 115.
Should be 115 then.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will reread the title. So this is an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, submitting a ballot question to the registered electors of the city at the November 3, 2015 regular election to amend Section 115 of the city charter so that franchisees must pay permit and inspection fees. Other questions or comments? Seeing none, we will open the public hearing at 7:36 p.m. This is regarding agenda item 8D, ordinance 73-2015. There's no one listed on the roster. Would anyone care to approach? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing at 7:36 and change. Council, any additional comments or motion?
Somebody else.
I have a motion. I move to approve the ordinance on, let me make sure I'm right, I'm on D. I move to approve the ordinance on second reading, submitting a ballot question to the registered electors of the city at the November 3rd, 2015 regular election to amend section, and it says 155.
It should be 115.
115 of the city charter so that franchisees must pay permit and inspection fees.
Second.
Council, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion or comments? Seeing none, Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay,
When this goes to legal, it will say 115.
Thank you.
Well, the ordinance says that. It does have the right number in the ordinance, I mean in the official document.
Thank you. Next is agenda item 8E. This is ordinance 81-2015, an ordinance of the City of Littleton, Colorado, submitting a ballot question to the registered electors of the city at the November 3, 2015 regular election, proposing to amend the city charter by the addition of a new section 124 to establish a charter review committee. And again, what this does is it puts into the charter some of the charter review process. Council, questions or comments? City Manager.
Mayor, I was just going to comment on this, that the Charter Committee was very, I believe intentional in their language of not identifying details within for the process, but allowing the council to make the determination of that. I would say in general, and again, they can speak up at some point, that they really felt like we live in representative government and the limitations on a council are appropriate in some areas, but in a lot of areas it really should, in order to maintain that long-term flexibility and having that document that can really stand the test of time, that when it wasn't required to have a limitation on it, that it should be up to the seated body. And so they very purposely did not say how often or what that process should be, but felt like the elected body at that time should make that determination.
Any other questions, comments?
So again, I believe I've asked this before, just for the public record. If we don't pass this, council still can, whenever it sees the need, appoint a charter committee, review committee.
That is absolutely correct.
And so one of my concerns is the more issues we have on the ballot, the less likely, I think, people will approve them. They'll just either start voting against all of them or none of them without really looking. So this one, to me, since we don't need it, I'm not feeling favorable to it.
And the committee did discuss it and obviously ultimately recommended it to you as a friendly reminder that we should look at the charter periodically. But Councilmember Cole is absolutely correct. The council, similar to what you did, can do this anytime you like. So it is not required.
Thank you. Council, absent additional questions, we'll open the public hearing at 7:40 p.m. There's no one listed on the roster. Doug?
Doug Clark, again, from House and Waring. The Charter Review Committee was appointed in July 2013 and given the task of reviewing charter for whether the charter meets the current needs of the city and whether the charter needs to be amended, and making recommendations to the City Council for amendments to meet the city's needs into the future. That's a quote out of the resolution. The committee met during 2013 and 2014 and brought its recommendations back to the council in August of last year. The committee recommended, according to my count, 61 changes to the charter. There's only 122 sections in the charter, and these 61 changes affect, add, or delete 70 of the charter's 122 sections. Basically, they recommended a rewrite of the charter. The council submitted no charter changes to the citizens' last election and is proposing 10 ballot issues addressing charter changes this election. At that rate, it'll take more than 12 years to plow through the proposed changes to the charter that have been submitted by this Charter Review Committee. It seems pretty obvious to me that the concept of using a Charter Review Committee to recommend wholesale changes or a rewrite of the charter isn't very practical. The Colorado statutes provide a mechanism, and our charter references those statutes for making massive changes to the charter, which is a charter commission, but that is different than a charter review committee. And the formation and the operation of that commission, as I said, are quite different from what you did with the Charter Review Committee and what you're proposing to put into the charter for changing the charter. I recommend against institutionalizing into the charter a method for reviewing and changing the charter, which obviously doesn't work, given the volume of work and the volume of proposed changes that have been submitted by the Charter Review Committee. Thank you.
Again, no one listed on the roster. Anyone else choosing to approach? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing at 7:42. Council looking for a motion or comments?
Just again, Michael, for context, the last time the charter got reviewed was when?
I'm not sure it ever went through a comprehensive review. When we looked back, we couldn't find any full analysis like this. It's been amended, obviously, periodically, yeah. But it's the councils in the past have never directed a body of citizens to go through and do this, and we would certainly not anticipate that this occurs on a regular and ongoing basis. I think part of the reason that is why the committee recommended this is exactly what we're up against right now, is you don't want to wait 20 more years and then you have all these changes and it doesn't, periodically just go in and say, okay, is there anything substantial that has changed? Tabor is a great example. And if Tabor had come along and we had looked at it, we probably would have made some changes there to come into compliance. Back in 1993 or 94, we would have taken that action. So this is definitely this was a large project. You heard how long it took. The committee spent hours and hours for each of those minutes, and the result of that are substantial changes. But as I said on the last item, I think part of what this committee was aiming for was that appropriate balance between keeping the council locked in some of those areas and then giving them more flexibility because accounting principles had changed, kind of philosophies may have changed in some of these areas, and moving in and not having to come back in future arenas and change this. And realize that the charter can either be a limiting document in its language or an enabling document, and absent that, you live under the state statute of Title 31. So we would not anticipate this coming back to this level until such time, or if we didn't touch it again for a long time. There's a very real issue around how we move these amendments forward, and that may be something that Council wants to take up at a later date about the approach, as we were learning, just on the limitations of the county's ballot system.
But just in general, the issue of 60 changes, I mean, that's not, when you consider a document that's 55 years old, that's not out of the realm of reason at all, that you would have an awful lot of stuff that's obsolete because the world has changed dramatically in 50, 60 years.
Yeah, and I think the most substantial example of that is in the finance world, and a lot of the bonding sections toward the back. And I don't have it with me, but my recollection is the committee basically said take all of that out because normal procedure now is through legislation to manage that, not through charter legislation. So yeah, you would not anticipate that occurring again.
Okay, thank you.
Bill.
Councilmember Brinkman.
I think that it would have been nice if prior councils had the same motivation that this council had to clean up that document. We are currently working with a code, building code, planning code, etc., that is wrought with many perils because it hasn't been updated. The charter is our guiding document. The charter is really what the council uses as a compass to make decisions. It tells us kind of where our boundaries and parameters are, and it is a document that is, it's like the Constitution for the city. And I think that going in and taking a look at it on a periodic as-needed basis is a responsible thing to do, and it has been incredibly irresponsible to have not done it to date. And that is why I give an incredible amount of appreciation to the Charter Committee and all the hours, tedious, long hours of discussion, debate, thoughtful consideration that volunteers from our community that we didn't, I think we may have provided lunch occasionally, but no lunches. I hope we gave you water. Water. That I don't want to have to put another group of citizens through that again. And I think these guys did a yeoman's job, and as a credit to them, their recommendation to secure the validity and the updatedness, new word, of this charter is something I respect. And so I will be supporting this, and I think that it is the right and proper thing to do. And certainly we're not going to do this every year, every other year, but as needed, and the occasional look at it is definitely part of what I think we're responsible for.
Councilmember Valdez.
I think, Councilmember Cole, you bring up a good point that it's almost like information overload, and it's too easy just to say no versus too easy to say yes. While I absolutely agree with the intent of this thing, but I think because we're so limited to what, is it like 3 sentences practically on what each item is going to be on the ballot, and when you read just that alone, it's just too easy for folks just to say no. I'd be okay with not including this one for reasons that you had mentioned as well. Cool. Okay. She can't talk right now until
close public hearing. Councilmember Hopping.
I would agree with Councilwoman Brinkman on this. I would hate to see us go along out of fear for not being able to convince people of why a specific charter modification is appropriate, that we would not put them out on the ballot. I mean, it's better to try and fail than to not have tried at all. As was mentioned, we have issues with some of the ordinances in this city that we're going to be reviewing and over the relatively near term that are the result of not looking at and constantly updating the documents that govern us and keeping them contemporary with where we are now. Times change. And I don't know that Richard Little would really recognize the rules we operate under. And we've got to do these on occasion, and to fail to do so is to have your head in the sand. So I would favor it.
Councilmember Beckman.
Yeah, without trying to overstate it, you know, it's the people's document is the charter. And for whatever reason, I think elected officials don't want to touch those things for some fear, some unfounded fear that, my God, you don't want to give it in front of the people, something bad could happen. And I think just the opposite. You take it, put it in front of the people, and let them take a look at it. Unless somebody wants to try to fearmonger and create some kind of great spectacle of black helicopters and aluminum hats that council's trying to pull something over somebody's eyes, you know, it's just council trying to do the best business we can to provide the people the charter that runs the city. And it's nothing more than that. And I just think it's appropriate that instead of kicking the can down the road because of that unfounded political fear that perhaps has existed for some previous decisions, we're choosing to move ahead with something that may be a little bit difficult. It's not very glamorous and all that, but it's the right thing to do, and I think you put it in the charter because obviously there was a problem doing it for quite a few years. Let's put it right out on the front so maybe in the future it's part of the people's business and the people's document.
Absent additional...
I have additional comment. If everybody else has gone around.
No, I get to say something. No, I get to say something.
I'm sorry, if you haven't already. Go ahead.
So before we go around the second time on this. A couple of things to mention as part of our discussion. We did take the 61 recommendations of the group, and through study session we've reduced it to a list of 30. So we have gone through some review and work, so it's not that list that's there. And I'm sure, as all council has done, one of our items is to review our governing document, the charter. And this is one of those things that's it's kind of important. And I have a checklist when I go camping of things that are kind of important to think about. And some of them I bring, like insect repellent. Don't always bring it, but have that opportunity to make that decision depending on where we're headed and where we're going, and whether it's going to be at altitude or somewhere that's not at altitude that kind of favors the propagation of mosquitoes, I suppose, in this. And so I think this is a good reminder. The committee had an opportunity to put that in front of us, and felt so strongly that what they were doing was something that's worthwhile that I think we should be in a position to put this in front of the voters.
You're always a tough act to follow with your camping analogy, with Grandma, I hope. I was just going to mention, the committee did an excellent job, and I wanted to see as many of these pass as possible. But again, my concern is that if we put out some things that aren't as important as some of the other cleanup that we're doing, it just becomes, again, information overload. That's all I have. Thanks. But the committee did a great job.
Okay. Council, the chair is looking for a motion.
Move to approve the ordinance on second reading, submitting a ballot question to the registered electors of the city at the November 3rd, 2015 regular election, proposing to amend the city charter by the addition of a new section 124 to establish a charter review committee.
Second.
Okay. Council, we have a motion and a second. Council, ready to vote?
The vote is 5 in favor, with Councilmember Cole and Councilmember Valdez voting no. The motion carries 5-2.
Thank you, Council. Moving on to Agenda Item 8F is Ordinance 83-2015. This is an ordinance submitting a ballot question to the registered electors of the city at the November 3, 2015 regular election to delete sections 116 and 117 of the city charter concerning railroad tracks, crossings, and switches along or across public thoroughfares. And again, the policy question is regarding the two sections, and we'll look for the city manager possibly to provide some of the context on this.
So once again, I think the committee's discussion on this was basically outdated and language that is not necessary. It deals with negotiation of raising or lowering railroad tracks running over, under, and along any public thoroughfare, and revocable licenses to lay side tracks and switches along that. And I think Council is cognizant of the ownership of the railway running through the city, and I don't recall, maybe it was Mayor Pro Tem. This was probably highly relevant language back in the day, and it's not as relevant right now, and federal law has changed and state law has changed as well. So the committee felt like this was outdated language and no longer necessary. And we should identify that we had incredible success in grade separation here in Littleton, which a lot of communities have not had and are now dealing with train noise.
Thank you. Council, any questions?
Question.
Councilmember Valdez.
For either the city attorney or city manager. So I realize this is just getting rid of old language and things that have already been done. There's not room to put that in here to strike old language from the charter, put that as part of the question, because just as it is, it's just say we're just taking this out. But I totally understand what we're trying to do here. My concern is that when you just read it, it doesn't say that.
City attorney.
Yeah, in general, we wouldn't put in the question sort of an explanation of why we're doing that. We're just asking a straightforward, easy to understand question, and it's whether those sections should be deleted.
And I'm all for that. I'm just saying that when you look at it, I know it because we have talked about it many times, but my concern is that so many people won't have the opportunity to read all that information.
The county won't let us put strike-throughs or red lines or any of that type of thing, so we have to ask and invest more.
But they would let you say to remove outdated language, wouldn't they?
Well, I guess that we do say that we're amending, but in this case, we're deleting the entire section. And so we're not just removing outdated language, we're deleting the entire section. So I think it's more clear and concise to simply say we're deleting those sections.
Okay, thank you.
And it might be good at this point in time for the city clerk to mention that there will be some communication that goes out through the Littleton Report or otherwise to all electors that there will be explanations.
Or the mayor can make that statement.
Or the mayor can make that.
Hopefully there's going to be a lot of communication.
Yeah.
We will be sending out in the Littleton Report each one of the ballot questions that we're putting forth, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to put a strike through underneath and just show what we're doing and what the question is, and that's it.
Okay. Thank you. Any additional questions? Okay, seeing none, this is with regard to Agenda Item 8F, Ordinance 83-2015, opening the public hearing at 7:57 p.m. There's no one listed on the roster. Would anyone care to approach?
Mayor, I believe this would be Sally's opportunity here.
This is our last one?
Mm-hmm. Sally,
last one.
This is the last one.
I am Sally Parsons. I live at 6777 Southridge Lane, Littleton, Colorado. And I'm pleased to hear the depth of understanding that most of the council members are expressing on these issues this evening. Each one of them were important to the council or to the committee and were thoroughly discussed. I think with Councilman Valdez, it would save a lot of time simply to say old information, cross it out. But it is our intent and the city staff's to put the total item on the ballot and to show where the changes are made. Most of them are simple corrections, and I think that this council is certainly aware of simple corrections can add up to a discussion of 30 minutes on one's council meeting minutes. This is nothing new to you or to those of us who have been following it. We think the citizens can handle the issues. They're very simple. And I appreciate the effort that the staff will be making on putting this forward. As your background information was developed when we were discussing these issues, and the cross-through with the colors was quite helpful. We had a lot of discussion from an open hearing on every single issue. They were well listened to and part of our consideration, and we were pleased that the individuals representing both sides of the issue were heard and understood. And it was a vote of the board, of the commission, to put forth this on a unanimous ballot. The part about having a committee or a commission, whichever level you would like to designate for further reviews, was important to the committee for just what appears to be happening this evening, is understanding what is going on and addressing how each one of these interrelate with another issue. It's very difficult to correct a few words in one part of the ordinance when it is also related to the, for instance, the responsibilities of our employees. So therefore we did divide it up into all of these pieces and for clarity, and are addressing them as a total picture so that one can relate to the other. We did discuss various times for requesting a possible review of the charter, but decided that that would be up to the council, and it would depend upon the issues controlling our responsibilities, or our being the city's, passed on to us both by federal law and certainly by the state statutes. So in those bases, we need to have the flexibility of not setting specifics, but we do want this reviewed. We do not want it to go over 50 years. Some of the terms are so outdated that even we could not exactly understand. And I was one of them who voted on the first one. And I can tell you that over the years, as I sat on council and in your position, it was difficult. And we really want you to proceed with what you're doing in clearing up the confusion and the outdated information in our charter. So good luck, and thank you very much for appointing this. Many councils didn't have the fortitude to approach an issue, even on the level of clarification. So we thank you, and I thank the staff again. They were great to work with and provided us lots of needed information. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally.
I think so.
And with that, we'll close the public hearing at 8:02 p.m. Council looking for a motion or comment?
I move to approve on second reading the ordinance submitting a ballot question to the registered electors of the city at the November 3rd, 2015 regular election to delete sections 116 and 117 of the city charter concerning railroad tracks, crossings, and switches along or across public thoroughfares.
Second.
Council, we have a motion and a second. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion carries unanimously.
And Council, that concludes our public or our printed and posted agenda for the evening. We are adjourned.
Ah, cool. What time is it? Oh.